We posted a poll on our YouTube community tab, and the question was, do you trust film distributors? So the poll received about 8,000 or so votes, and 85% of those polled said they do not trust distributors. Now, we didn't ask them in what capacity they've dealt with them. Where do you think this negative reputation stems from?
It all goes to the failure rate of films. And I think that some distributors oversell what will happen to films in order to get them. Not all, but some do. I think it goes to expectations of just getting a distribution deal and thinking, hey, I'm done. It's going to make money. I think that's part of it. I think it's frustrating to have gatekeepers to the public. You know, there's so many things coming out of a dollar before it gets to you as the filmmaker, because someone buys the film on iTunes. iTunes is taking 30%, right? That 70% is going to your distributor. Your distributor is taking 25%, and costs. So when they get by costs, then they're paying you at that point, right? So there's a lot of international sales. Your international sales company is taking 20%. They're putting it with a distributor overseas who's going to take their percentage. That distributor is putting it on a digital platform that's going to put it and make money in Germany or wherever. So there's 3 steps before it gets to you. So if it were the case that, and it is the case that people could go and put film, you do have the ability to go put the film on digital platforms yourself. So there are labs that have kind of aggregator, kind of call themselves aggregators, although I think the word aggregator is kind of a strange word for it. But all they're really doing is facilitating placing the film on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, etc. And there, you're paying them the cost of encoding the film for the platform, but they're not taking a percentage at all. So iTunes is taking 30% and you're getting 70%. The reason why, and now maybe some films should do that because they could just, it's a small film and they can push people to watch on iTunes, and then they get they reap what they sow. The reason people go to distributors as opposed to doing it themselves is distributors can get to more platforms than these labs can. There are some platforms that require a pitch. So to get a film on in demand, DirecTV, Dish, etc., you need someone to go and pitch the movie to them. And then when it comes out on iTunes and Amazon, etc., it's going to be, the release date is going to be the same for those platforms. In addition, these distributors have relationships with streaming companies like Netflix and Hulu and HBO. So once they have the film in the transactional VOD world, they're then going to go try to make that sell. If you go put your film on iTunes, you can't, there's no way to get into Netflix at that point. Even I can't go to Netflix. I can go to Netflix Originals division as a producer rep, but I can't go to them in a distributor position of where it is after it's been on transactional for a while. So if we lived in a world where all these platforms were open to filmmakers going there, that's what we would do. And I would become a marketing expert instead. I would help people with marketing and just say, hey, let's just go put it on these platforms. But there are gatekeepers to those platforms, or people have those relationships, and that's the reason we have to use them. And then there are some people that treat that space honorably and understand, are respectful of the fact they got lucky enough to be in such a position to be the gateway for other people's content and treat their filmmakers well and explain everything to them and try to do the best. And then there are some that really just take it and never call you back. And that's for, I think it kind of goes back to communication. I think at the end of the day, there's just, if distributors did a better job of communicating on the front end what's going to happen, what's likely, what's realistically a medium outcome or the best outcome. And in addition, we're a little bit more open as filmmakers came back to them with questions about how it's going and explain why they were doing what they were doing. I think if they were better at that in general, that poll number would be a little bit better. Although I think the main reason for it is just most films fail. And therefore, who we're going to blame? I'm not going to blame my movie. My movie is perfect, right? It's my baby. And the person who adopted my baby is not raising it properly, But yeah, I think, but that's hard. That's hard for them to do. It's at the end of the deal, you're dealing with corporations, and distributors are not individuals. And so you've got the director of acquisitions, the director of sales, the director of delivery, the CFO, the accounting department, and they all have their own lanes of what they kind of deal with. And as the filmmaker, you're like, oh, so who do I talk to about the fact that this doesn't look right, or Amazon, my poster on Amazon looks a little weird, or whatever. And sometimes it's hard to navigate because not all companies have a front person that's just like, kind of the go-to for the client to say, okay, you got this problem, talk to this person. I think part of it is just like economics, like they just don't have the bandwidth to have that many employees at the end of the day, and take they do the math of like, we need to take this number of films, we can make this amount of money, and so we've got to stretch our employees to do this number of jobs, and they're just not going to get royal treatment like they want.
And then there's also the sort of thought of that, filmmakers are artists and their work is kind of never done. So they're probably tweaking the poster art, maybe the log line, different things. And then they're making all these changes and submitting it. And then you're dealing with business people who don't have the time maybe to handhold all these subsequent changes. I'm sure that probably happens a little bit, and then they feel like they're being ignored. And maybe in some cases they are being ignored, and others, it's just their demands are so high.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't see a lot of people still tinkering after the fact. It's usually the case that they have to, at some point they have to, okay, I'm done, and let it go creatively, at least in terms of log line or trailer or things like that. I don't see a lot of people. Where I see it breaking down is much more in terms of like, well, what's happening? You're like, are you trying to sell Netflix? Like, I haven't heard anything. And most distributors just don't care about communicating that. They don't really, they feel like, we're doing our job. We're going to pay you what you're due, but we don't need to explain to you what we're saying to Netflix or when we're going to talk to Netflix or any of that. I just feel like distributors probably don't feel like they have the time in a day to talk to all their filmmakers about all the intricacies of everything they do, is my best guess. Best guess from being on the outside looking in a lot, but never really being in at the same time.
What type of accounting practices should a filmmaker expect when working with a distributor?
So overwhelmingly, most distributors offer quarterly accountings, and that's pretty standard to at least get 2 or 3 years of quarterly, and then turns to biannual after that, or annual sometimes. And that's when most of your revenue that's when it really counts the most. The frustrating thing with accounting is that distributors are on accounting terms as well with the platforms. So a lot of times people get their first quarter statement and they're ready to, okay, let's see how we did. And there's not much there. And that's partly because when I go and buy a film on Amazon, Amazon keeps that money for 90 days before it hits the bank account of your distributor. And so if it's March and I paid for in March, it's not going to hit the distributor until June, and that's the second quarter. So even though someone paid for something in the first quarter, the distributor didn't get it until the second quarter, and so that's when they're going to account for it, usually anywhere from 30 to 90 days after the quarter. So it takes a long time for stuff to come in, and that's frustrating. I wish it was more. Unfortunately, that's what makes it hard to do anything in social media, to try to help the cause, because you can, if you buy ads and stuff for lots of products out there, you can kind of see what it does for you, right? And if you spend, $10,000 on Facebook ads, you can see what the return is on whatever you're selling pretty quickly because you're the one selling it. But in film, you do the advertisement and you're waiting 6 months to find out whether anybody bought the film on Amazon, and then you're past really the period. So that makes the whole business so hard, because you just don't. The companies that dominate the space in terms of where people buy movies can dictate the terms of how they account, even to the distributors.
So you're saying that a filmmaker reasonably, most contracts would say every quarter you're getting a statement for 2 years, and then after that it's biannually and then annually?
Yeah.
Okay, so then if they have 9 years, then toward the latter end of it, they're going to be getting yearly statements.
Correct. And it depends on the distributor, because some distributors are more amenable to changing their basic terms than others. So it kind of depends. But some distributors will say, well, eventually if we don't collect anything, we're not going to account. So there's zero coming in. There's no reason to send you a piece of paper that says zero came in. Sometimes we try to add language that says you're going to count to us regardless, because we want you to be accountable, per se. So it can depend on the distributor.